Step softly onto the creaking deck, where the salt air is thick and sails snap against a gray sky. Tonight, we'll drift back to the shadowy holds of ships crisscrossing the world during the age of exploration. A place where food kept men awake not with comfort, but with hunger, uncertainty, and longing for home. Settle in as we gently unravel the story of why food sucked on those long, lonely journeys, inviting you to relax, reflect, and imagine each bite and breath on ancient seas. Step softly onto the creaking deck as the night stretches wide above, a cloak of deep ink speckled with distant stars. Feel the bite of salt-laden wind as it brushes your cheeks, sharp and bracing, mingling with the faint scent of damp wood and tar from the ship's weathered planks. Around you, flickering torches cast uneven pools of golden light, their flames dancing on rows of sturdy barrels stacked deep along the narrow passageways. Can you hear it? The murmur of voices carried low, footsteps muffled on rope mats, the occasional call of a seabird slipping through the chill air. This night holds a hush filled with both excitement and dread, the mix of hopes for new horizons and the shadows of uncertainty tucked into every corner of the ship. Imagine the feeling of stepping up the gangplank, one cautious step at a time, your boots thudding gently against the wooden boards. The ship creaks below your feet, the sound steady and rhythmic, like a living heartbeat, reminding everyone aboard that this floating world will soon be both home and prison for the days to come. The barrels are pressed tight against the bulkheads, bundles of salted meat, hard biscuits baked to last, sacks of grain, and casks filled with water and beer. These stores promise sustenance, yet carry the weight of scarcity and worry. A faint mustiness rises from the hold below, mingling with the stale scent of spilled salt and mold that is impossible to chase away. Do you ever notice how scent can tell a story? This blend of salt, wood, and age holds whispers of hardships ahead. The gnawing hunger, the endless days without fresh air, the creeping fear that even a simple meal may turn to ashes on the tongue. As you move along the deck, the crew's chatter ebbs and flows like gentle waves, fragments of stories about distant lands, the challenge of navigation, and rumors about what waits beyond the horizon. Yet beneath it all lies a shared concern: the condition of the food stores, already suspect and likely to worsen as weeks slip by. Imagine that low dread mingling with the salt breeze as a reminder that sustenance at sea is a fragile thing. The simple pleasure of fresh bread or ripe fruit is a luxury yet undreamed of. Even as torches flare, casting long shadows into the dark, the taste of salt and hard biscuit lingers as a constant companion. Can you feel the uncertainty tucked into every movement? The furtive glances cast toward the hold, the quiet disappointment when new stores fail to arrive? This is not a voyage swathed in comfort. It is a crossing into the unknown, where food can be just as dangerous as storms or enemy ships. What food comforts do you think would sustain you in a place like this? What tastes, smells, or memories might carry you through the long nights aboard? As the ship's timbers groan and the sails begin to catch the steady night wind, the journey laps forward into mystery and challenge, with food both lifeline and burden slipping silently beneath deck. Let this moment settle as a beginning, the first chapter of a journey where every breath, every bite, every shared meal will slowly reveal the harsh reality hiding beneath the promise of exploration. Picture yourself in the dim, uneven light below deck, the salty sea air clinging to everything, even here where lanterns sway with each roll of the ship. You're surrounded by the hollow thump of waves against thick timbers, the ship's slow groaning, and the sudden jostle as a bench leg shifts on old boards. The air is heavy, a mixture of damp canvas, oil, sweat, and something unmistakably sour. Have you ever walked into a room where the smell hits you first? A camp dining hall, maybe, where stories and odors linger in the walls. For sailors, the sea table is less table and more idea. A set place, often a makeshift board across kegs, where those on a long journey gather with whatever rations the day allows. There's camaraderie here, yes, a certain comfort in the way backs press together on narrow benches and bowls are shared between rough hands. But just as strong is the air of disappointment, the silence that falls over a crew who knows what's missing before the meal even begins. Each meal is a toss between hope and hardship, the anticipation of something hot, often dashed by a ladle, scraping out cold stew that smells more of mold than meat. You might notice the way each sailor scans the food, searching for something special, a stray chunk of carrot, a ribbon of fat, a crumb of bread not tough as driftwood. Meals are part ritual, part challenge. For those first days at sea, the food holds a sense of comfort and promise. Hardtack biscuits that still snap, salted meat still mostly edible, dried peas, or beans that soften if boiled long enough. But the promise fades as weeks pass. Water turns brackish, bread gets weevils, and anything fresh is a memory carried on the tongue like a lost song. Does this remind you of making dinner on a camping trip or pulling a pre-packed meal from an RV cooler days into a long road journey? Just as many people today find themselves negotiating over the last marshmallow or complaining about the taste of reheated chili, the ship's crew weigh every bite against the longing for what they left behind. Have you ever bitten into a meal you didn't want, but ate anyway because you knew you'd need the strength? There is resilience, too, in plain food, in the routine of eating together, even when the fare is poor. The space itself is spare. Benches wedged between cargo, tin bowls, and wooden spoons clacking. The candle's flame casts long shadows on faces lined with sun and salt. Conversation, when it happens, is hushed. Sometimes a joke about the cook, sometimes a story from home, sometimes only the quiet scraping of a spoon on an empty bowl. For some, it's the one chance a day to remember they are not alone. Fingers touching in the passing of bread, heads bent together over half-remembered recipes and the scents they miss most. A rare sweet, a bit of cheese, a sprig of dried herb tucked into a pocket. These are treasures, reminders that even on lonely seas, someone thought to save a taste of better days. Meals at sea are always a compromise, sometimes a surprise. Maybe the stores held out, maybe a barrel split open to reveal a rot so fierce even the most stoic turned away. Either way, hunger and hope meet every day at the sea table, keeping spirits alive even as flavor and satisfaction drift further from reach. If the memory of a meal, shared, missed, or unexpected, has ever lingered with you longer than its taste, you know the strange promise and peril of eating on the move. As you imagine the creak of benches and the aroma of rations, let these images carry you forward into the strange world of hardtack and survival food, a world where every bite brings both comfort and an echo of what's been lost. The story, like the voyage, is only just beginning. Imagine stepping down into the shadowed hold of a wooden ship, the air thick and stale, wrapped in the lingering scent of salt and dried grain. The only light filters dimly from above, casting mottled patterns on rows of barrels and sacks, and in the center, piles of hardtack lie stacked like bricks, unyielding, dry, and ready to endure whatever the sea brings. Hardtack, the anchor of the sailor's diet, was a bread unlike any you've likely tasted. Dense and rock hard, it was baked to withstand months at sea, sometimes twice or even thrice cooked to remove every trace of moisture. If you reach for a piece, feel its coarse, grainy surface under your fingers, edges sharp, corners cracked from long storage. Try to break it, and instead of a clean snap, it's more like shattering a stone, releasing a faint dust that hangs in the heavy air. How did it taste? Imagine a mouthful of dry, chalky bread with a hint of salt and an aftertaste of age. The flavor, flat and unyielding, filling the stomach far more than it pleases the tongue. Many sailors learned quickly that to eat hardtack, you often needed to dunk it first into a mug of weak ale, a splash of water gone stale, or even into the greasy broth at the bottom of a bowl, just to keep from breaking a tooth. Some nibbled it absent-mindedly. Others gnawed at a corner for minutes before softening a single bite. Eating hardtack was less about pleasure and more about survival. The biscuit was so tough that teeth would ache, and many men ended up with cracked molars or sore jaws after weeks or months at sea. Can you imagine the determination needed to chew through such an unyielding ration each day? Have you ever tried a food so difficult to eat it seemed more of a challenge than a meal? A cracker forgotten too long, or an overbaked crust you had to finish anyway? But hardtack became more than just food. It was a shared experience, a daily reminder of endurance and the hardship of voyage. Sailors trading stories or dreaming of land would joke about it, comparing whose biscuit was hardest or who lost the most teeth. In some ways, it was a badge of perseverance, the one thing every hand on ship touched and tasted, no matter rank or rankling appetite. Maybe this brings to mind your own tough food tales. Only if you'd like, think of a moment when a meal was about necessity, not enjoyment. A stubbornly chewy protein bar on a mountain trail, or a cafeteria mystery meat that stuck with you not for its taste, but for the story it left behind. If it feels right, share your roughest food memory below. Your story might bring a smile, a shiver, or a knowing nod from someone else listening tonight. As you move away from the stores, the smell of hardtack, salt, and old grain lingers, settling into your senses like the dry crumbs that seem to find their way into every fold of fabric. The hardships of eating at sea were only just beginning, paving the way for stories of sour water and salted meats that would test not only the body's strength, but the very spirit of every sailor on board. Let this simple biscuit stay with you for a moment. Dry, stubborn, tangible proof of the resolve it took to cross unknown oceans, one cracked, dusty bite at a time. The dawn breaks softly over the rolling waves, and with it comes a faint hope for refreshment. Imagine the ship's crew, having weathered the cold night air, turning to their stores of water, once fresh and clear, but now a far cry from the drink they'd hoped for. Walk with me into the dimly lit below decks, where barrels of water stand stacked, their surfaces cool and slick with condensation. The air here is thick and musty, heavy with the scent of aged wood and salt. Reach out to touch the barrel's iron hoops, smooth but worn from years of handling. Nearby, the faint tang of brine hangs, mingling with a subtle hint of yeasty fermentation. The once pristine water has grown sour, harboring invisible threats that prey silently on the crew's health. Fresh water aboard these voyaging ships was a treasure that quickly turned perilous. Without the means to refrigerate or properly seal, water was stored in wooden barrels, vessels that breathed, letting in the salty sea air and inviting spoilage. The water's surface, once shining and reflective, could become foul and greenish, hosting algae and bacteria unseen by the naked eye. Swirling murky water, tainted with the decay of long confinement, could cause illness and desperation. With fresh water in such disrepair, sailors turned to the next safest things brewing in the ship's hull: ale, beer, and even wine. These drinks, fermented and preserved, offered protection from the unseen dangers lurking in stale water barrels. Their smells filled the air, a mix of malt sweetness, earthy hops, and warmed grape skins, a stark but comforting contrast to the sourness lingering nearby. Imagine the crew gathering around the deck rail after the day's toil, each man with a wooden tankard in hand. The sound of hearty laughter mingles with the clink of mugs as ale sloshes, sending frothy heads to spill over. Yet beneath this joviality lies an awareness. The ale, while safer to drink, carried its own dangers: intoxication, compromised judgment, and a hunger dulled by spirits. Think of modern camping trips, when fresh water is scarce and coolers run low. There's a moment of anxiety as you ration what you have, knowing that refilling might not come soon. You might taste the last of bottled water, savor that first sip of beer, or debate the safety of the local stream. Much like those campers, the sailors lived with this perennial uncertainty. The ship's surgeons warned of the quiet toll this reliance on alcohol could take. Skipper's orders often regulated rations, balancing the need for hydration against the perils of drunken mishaps. Still, for many, a cup of ale was a small comfort, a ritual marking the end of the day and the attempt to numb the endless sea's harshness. In this way, water, simple, essential, held power far beyond the quenching of thirst. It symbolized the tenuous grip on health and sanity, a daily gamble that could tip the scales between survival and despair. Can you recall a moment when access to clean water influenced your mood during a trip or a moment of need? Do you have your own ways of coping when the ordinary comforts are out of reach? If it feels right to you, share your thoughts below. The simple gifts of hydration and the little rituals around them often go unrecognized but mean so much. As the barrels are sealed again and the crew settles for the night, the scent of hops and malt hangs faintly in the salty air. Close your eyes and breathe in that mix of sweetness and salt. Let it carry you toward the next chapter, where the ship's provisions turn to salted meats and biscuits, and the fight against hunger and despair continues on the endless blue horizon. Imagine stepping into the dimly lit cargo hold of a wooden ship, where the thick scent of brine mingles with the musty aroma of aging wood and tangy salt. Sturdy barrels lie stacked floor to ceiling, their iron hoops creaking softly as movements shift the ship's load. The low murmur and clinking of wooden mugs float from above deck, carrying warmth and camaraderie, even as this space holds the stark reality of preserved provisions. Within these barrels is the staple of the seaman's diet: salted beef and fish, packed tightly to endure months at sea but offering little in the way of comfort or flavor. Reach down and touch the rough wood of a barrel. It's slick with salt residue that sharpens the air and is acrid against the nose. The surface feels worn smooth from weather and repeated handling, but inside, the contents tell a harsher tale. Uncovering a barrel reveals a tangled mess of heavily brined meat and fish, their textures tough and fibrous, often interlaced with unwelcome guests, worms and maggots that found their way past the wooden staves. The salty brine is so dense it almost glistens, coating every inch of the coarse chunks inside. The aroma, equal parts salt, fish oil, and decay, fills the nostrils, a deep reminder of the sea's merciless hold on provisions. Chewing such preserved meat was an exercise in endurance. Sailors would wrestle with sinewy, rubbery textures that seemed to defy teeth, forcing hunger to overcome taste and sometimes disgust. Cracks in the meat invited more worms, and each bite was a gamble between nourishment and revulsion. This was food as survival rather than pleasure. The process of preservation was grueling, reliant on careful salting and packing, augmented by barrels treated to resist seawater intrusion. Yet despite efforts, the unyielding conditions of humidity, temperature changes, and time conspired to spoil even the hardiest provisions. Worms and rot were unwelcome, but frequent reminders of the impossibility of perfect storage. Picture the sailors gathered around the cramped galley, passing morsels of salted beef with a resigned humor, exchanging tales of whose last ration had been worst, or which barrel held the toughest meat. It was an endurance test, binding crew through shared hardship. As you imagine this, you might draw parallels to camping or hiking food you've encountered. Packed for survival, often tough, sometimes unexpectedly off, yet eaten to carry on. The contrast between camaraderie in shared meals and the bleakness of the diet is a constant tension at sea. If it feels right to you, only if you'd like, consider the toughest meal you've ever endured, not for flavor, but necessity. What was your story? Maybe share below, gently, to remind others that resilience often lies in the simplest, most unglamorous experiences. From barrels flooded with brine and tough flesh, the ship's provisions remind us that the journey of exploration was as much about endurance as about discovery. Next, we'll drift onward into the world of drink, warding off thirst in a place where water itself so often turned to peril. Picture the dim light filtering through cracks above, a ship's belly filled with barrels, ropes, and shadows. There's a dense, musty odor, the scent of wood soaked in brine and human sweat, mingling with something you can't quite name, a sense of lost freshness. Now imagine a table set not with vibrant leaves and crisp roots, but with nothing green at all. Just pale biscuits, slabs of salted meat, and perhaps, if you're lucky, a shriveled onion that's clung to life long past its prime. Have you ever craved a taste so deeply? A crisp apple, a handful of lettuce, the sweetness of a strawberry, that it seemed to fill your mind? The sailors on these ships did. Their diets were empty of color and crunch, the story of every meal written in browns and grays. With no refrigeration or hydroponic gardens, fruits and vegetables disappeared early in the voyage, replaced only by canned hope and faded memory. The lack of fresh greens wasn't just a matter of flavor. It was a slow march toward sickness. Scurvy, the dreaded sailor's disease, flourished wherever there were no lemons to squeeze or greens to nibble. Bleeding gums, aching joints, fatigue so deep it seemed part of your bones. These were the body's way of mourning for missing vitamin C. For those curious, scurvy is a disease caused by vitamin C deficiency. In the era before supplements and reliable storage, it could turn the mightiest crews into ghosts, sometimes wiping out entire expeditions. Life at sea birthed wild, vivid fantasies about green foods. Sailors spoke often and longingly of gardens back home, The snap of fresh peas, the coolness of a cucumber slice, the sun-warmed tang of a tomato plucked straight from its vine. Some even dreamed in color, imagining feasts that shimmered with lettuce, carrots, and handfuls of glistening berries. It's a craving any camper or road tripper might understand when fresh groceries run out. Those last bites of salad, the final banana tucked in a bag, all the more precious for its rarity. Just as many people today might feel the sting of missing their favorite fresh food during an unusually long winter or a cross-country drive, sailors' longing for greens was both a physical ache and an ache of spirit. The taste, texture, and clean scent of something truly fresh became a symbol of life and home, a reminder of what the open sea could never truly offer. Sometimes, a rare island stop would bring an ecstasy of green, a single wild herb gathered from a rocky cliff, a handful of sour berries, or even the treasured seeds of a foreign plant tucked into a pocket for some future planting. These moments became stories, told and retold with the wonder and reverence of legend. If you pause now and reflect, what's the one fresh ingredient you'd miss most if you couldn't have it for months at a stretch? Is it a tangy orange, the buttery crunch of lettuce, the spicy freshness of cilantro, or something else entirely? Only if you'd like, share your answer below. Your small comfort might spark new appreciation in someone else's heart tonight. So as you picture the longing faces gathered around a sea table barren of green, let their cravings echo in the quiet of your own kitchen or the next time you savor a crisp salad. There's magic in every bite of living food, something sailors dreamed of on starless nights, scattered seeds of hope drifting with them across the endless blue. When you're ready, drift forward with us into darker corners below deck, where rot and despair found fertile ground among what little food remained, and longing took on the heavy scent of regret. Imagine stepping into the darkest recesses of a ship's hold, where light barely reaches and the air hangs thick and heavy. The first thing that hits you is the smell, a sour, clinging stench of rot and decay, mingled with the sharp bite of salt and the damp, musty breath of old wood. It's a smell so potent it wraps around you like a heavy blanket, impossible to shrug off. Nearby, the rough wood of barrels and crates feels slick beneath your fingertips, damp and pocked from months at sea. Patches of slime and grainy residue catch the faintest light, a tactile reminder of the battle being waged against spoilage below decks. Have you ever opened a forgotten lunchbox at the back of a fridge, the air rushing out heavy with the telltale funk of long-lost food, or found a cooler left unemptied after a summer day, the sourness sapping warmth from the room? This is that smell multiplied, stretched over miles of wood and cargo. Rodents scurry unseen, their tiny claws clicking like distant rain on metal, weaving through the maze of food stores. Sometimes a faint rustle or dropping betrays their presence. The hold is alive with slow decay and quiet infestation, a realm where survival is measured in every blocked hole and every thwarted nibble. Barrels thought sealed leak their briny contents, pooling dark and thick on the rough floorboards. Clumps of meat hardened into something beyond recognition, their texture a nightmare for the tongue and teeth alike. The air tastes sharp with ammonia and sourness, a bitter seasoning no sailor wished for. Despite the revulsion, these provisions are lifelines. Sailors gnaw on dry biscuits softened by seawater, swallow thin broths thickened with rehydrated beans, and sometimes share a grim joke about whose ration turned first. What's the foulest smell you've ever encountered? One you couldn't forget, even if you tried? If you feel like it, share your story in the comments. It might bring a laugh, a shudder, or a comforting sense of shared experience to others. As you imagine lingering in this space, feel the weight of the damp air on your skin, the gritty dust settled in the corners, and the cold bite of poor ventilation pressing against your lungs. There's an undeniable heaviness here, a lesson in patience and endurance, written on every rotten rind and discolored barrel. From this dark and smelling bowels of the ship, we move next to the rhythms of ration and hunger, where the body's needs push on beyond what the mouth can easily accept, and the longing for homegrown flavors starts to grow. The first light of dawn barely filters through the narrow portholes, casting long shadows across the cramped mess deck where the men gather for their morning rations. The air is thick with a mix of salt spray and the faint scent of sweat, mingling with the sound of wooden bowls scraping against rough-hewn tables. Imagine the chill of early morning touching your skin as you sit shoulder to shoulder with crewmates, waiting for the day's first meal. A ritual threaded through with quiet anticipation and the rumbling weight of hunger. The clatter of ladles echoes softly as they dip into heavy pots, scooping out watery gruel or salted porridge, thick and pale, barely masking the tang of brine. Each man's eyes trace the portion sizes, meager but necessary, passed without fanfare but with an unspoken understanding of the scarcity lurking below the surface. Has there ever been a time when you've watched your own breakfast come and go with a similar mix of relief and longing, craving just a little more warmth or sweetness than the moment offers? Occasionally, a sardonic comment slips out, a grumble about the thin ration, a joke about the cook's skills, or a wistful memory of a fresh loaf from home. Yet even in these modest exchanges, there is camaraderie, shared hardship forging quiet bonds stronger than any wood or sail. Between bites, the men steal glances toward their stretch of the ship, dreaming of fresh food beyond the horizon. On rare occasions, the precious arrival of a citrus fruit, sharp with sour sweetness, sparks quiet celebration and hope amidst the monotony. The scent of orange rind, fresh and lively against the dense atmosphere, seems almost magical, awakening senses dulled by weeks of sameness. Can you remember a moment when a simple treat, maybe a piece of chocolate, a squeeze of lemon in your tea, or a bite of something special, changed the mood of an ordinary day? That small burst of flavor can be like a secret shared among friends, whispered across a table, sustaining spirits far longer than the food itself. As night falls, the hunger deepens, and the low murmur of midnight rations carries through the cold corridors. The rustling of blankets pulled tight and silent footsteps mark the passage of men seeking a solace found only in stolen bites and whispered confidences. The absent warmth of the galley fire looms large in the mind, as dreams of stolen fruit or a secret pouch of sweets dance behind closed lids. This rhythm, marked by sparse meals and quiet longing, repeats day by day, intertwining the physical challenge of survival with the emotional endurance of hope. It speaks to something universal, the need for both nourishment and comfort, the human heart's quiet rebellion against emptiness. If it feels right to you, perhaps consider your own rituals surrounding food, the simple moments of joy and sharing that sustain you through harder times. If you would like, share a memory or a small secret about a food or taste that has brightened your day here in the comments. Your stories may help nourish another listener's heart tonight. With bellies only half filled and spirits only partly at rest, The crew settles in to face another day on the ocean, their dreams both anchored to the familiar and adrift with the promise of what lies beyond the farthest wave. Imagine a ship's galley, quiet, but for the low murmur of sailors gathering around rough wooden benches. The room smells of brine, salt, and the faint metallic tang of iron cookware mixed with the persistent scent of stale air trapped behind thick wooden walls. Each day, men partake in meals that have become familiar, not for comfort, but for constancy, a kind of bland hymn to survival. Picture biting into a biscuit so hard and flavorless it dissolves dryly on the tongue, leaving only a ghost of what once belonged to the earth. The food aboard these ships was often stripped of all flavor. No spices remained to lift the meal. No fresh herbs to brighten a stew. Salt was more a preservative than an ingredient, its bite abrasive and constant. This monotony of taste weighed heavily on the men, whispering of home and hearth while denying any real comfort. This relentless blandness, seemingly petty compared to storms or swords, became one of the greatest enemies aboard. The lack of flavor sapped not only bodies, but souls. It made every meal a reminder of confinement, of distance from land and life. Perhaps you faced a similar sensation, maybe in a hospital room, where meals come with sterile uniformity and lack vibrancy, or maybe when you've tried a military MRE designed for function over pleasure. These foods sustain, but rarely comfort. This is the world of taste at sea, a place where the palate rebels against sameness, and even the strongest men dream wistfully of a peppered stew or a slice of ripe fruit. Yet within this monotony, sailors found small joys, a rare burst of sweetness from a piece of hard candy smuggled aboard, or the careful saving of a beloved spice shared among trusted hands. These tiny rebellions against blandness were acts of hope and humanity. Picture the murmur of voices swapping stories, comparing the slight distinctions between batches of biscuit, recounting tales of trading for local delicacies when ashore, and dreaming aloud of flavors left behind. In this bland world, the mind turns to memory. Gardens, spice markets, kitchens filled with warmth and variety. The fantasy of taste, hot peppers, fragrant curry, tangy citrus, becomes a balm to the spirit. How often do we take flavor for granted? Taste has a power beyond mere nourishment. It grounds us in place and time, linking us to culture and comfort. If you think about your own experiences, what flavors instantly bring you back home or lift your spirits? Is it cinnamon in the air during the holidays, the first sip of coffee in the morning, or maybe the freshness of a tomato picked from your own garden? If it feels right to you, only if you'd like, please share your favorite comfort flavor or a food memory that brings you peace and grounding in the comments below. Your story might kindle gratitude in others and remind us all of the simple joys in flavor. As the ships continued their long voyages, the dull meals tested the sailors' endurance, but also highlighted the importance of hope, camaraderie, and small moments of warmth amid austerity. So, as you listen and breathe with me, imagine setting down this hard biscuit, leaning back from the table, and savoring the memories of tastes that carry you beyond the sea. In the next chapter, we'll explore how salt and ship biscuits sustain the men through hardship, and the subtle rituals that turn survival food into symbols of resilience. Imagine the coarse grit of salt crystals pressed against your tongue, a biting contrast to the dry emptiness in your stomach. The scent of brine hangs in the air, sharp and unforgiving, mingling with the faint dust of flour and wood that seems to settle on every surface of the ship. Salt was more than seasoning during these voyages. It was the lifeblood of preservation, a necessary harshness that kept meat from spoiling and bread from molding. Yet, its omnipresence meant every bite was tinged with its sting, and sailors' hands, cracked and raw, bore testament to its drying power. The staple of a sailor's diet was the infamous ship's biscuit, a hard square cracker that was baked to last for months at sea. Picture its blunt edges and chalky surface, unyielding to knife or teeth without considerable effort. The biscuit crumbles reluctantly, releasing a faintly bitter dust, tasting of long storage and salt shadow. Eating ship's biscuits was a daily trial, often soaked in stale water or diluted ale to soften them before consumption. Many sailors learned to crush them into fine crumbs or grind them for use in stews and gruels, masking their tough texture with other flavors, no matter how sparse. There is a paradox here, the simplicity of sustenance intertwined with monotony and hardship. Imagine the routine, the same biscuit every meal, day after day, its flavor fading into the background as hunger became the only true taste. Some found comfort in routine, the predictability of each meal, a small anchor amid the chaos of ocean life. Others craved variety, fantasizing about fresh foods and spices left behind, the joy of flavors dancing freely rather than muted beneath salt. Consider your own experiences with food. Does comfort come from consistency, the familiar shape and taste of a favorite breakfast, or from diversity that stimulates the senses? What would you choose if forced to eat the same food for an entire month? The salt that preserved food also held dangers. Too much could irritate wounds, sap moisture, and exacerbate the dryness biting into the sailor's skin. It was as relentless as the sea itself. Imagine salt flakes suspended in slanting sunlight through a ship's hatch, or carried on the wind as the ship crests a wave, a reminder of distance and endurance. If it feels natural to do so, share in the comments below your own thoughts. Do you find daily comfort in routine, or does variety uplift your spirit? Could you thrive with a single choice of food, or does your heart crave the new each day? Your reflections might guide others navigating their own journeys of simplicity or abundance. As the salt-crusted biscuit breaks reluctantly between teeth, let's move forward with the crew toward the next chapter, the occasional surprises and small rebellions that flavor the journey, from rampant pests to stolen spices, revealing the fragile thread of life stitched by taste and endurance. Imagine lifting the lid on a wooden barrel in the dimness below deck, expecting the familiar weight of a biscuit or a wedge of cheese, only to be greeted by a sight that twists your stomach. Pale maggots wriggle in crevices, their bodies slick with damp, clustered between the layers of what was once dry bread. The odor is sharp and slightly sweet, with a sour undertone, the unmistakable scent of something gone so far from fresh, it's nearly alive again. Have you ever peeled open a forgotten loaf at home, only to find it dusted in blue and green? A patch of mold that makes you wrinkle your nose, toss it straight into the trash. Now imagine that same discovery, multiplied not just by size, but by necessity, with no other options waiting on the shelf. On these ships, pests weren't rare. They were constant companions, as much a part of supper as the biscuits and cheese itself. Sailors learned to tap the hardtack on the table, watching for the telltale fall of dried beetle shells and threads of weevil dust, or to squint at the cheese's surface searching for the fuzzy shapes of new-grown mold and the small holes bored by insects. Even the ship's steady roll seemed to aid these uninvited guests, jostling them deeper into the cracks and seams of every ration. Some men tried to salvage what they could, breaking off corners and brushing away the worst infestations, trading the cleanest bits for a favor or a story. Others learned to ignore what they could not avoid, biting through biscuit and bug with equal resolve, convincing themselves that a little extra protein would do no harm. The desperate sometimes joked in hushed voices, "It all tastes the same once you're hungry enough." But in truth, biting down on a wriggling surprise could turn even the hardiest appetite to stone. Cheese, too, presented its own trials. Meant to endure travel, the best rounds might grow firm and sharp, while the worst went slimy, slicked in olive oil, thick with streaks of blue, or covered in a downy white that clung stubbornly to every slice. Picture the first sniff of a spoiled fridge drawer. That mixture of bitterness and earth that's so strong, you almost taste it at the back of your throat. Now, consider having no choice but to carve away mold and hope for the best. Just as many people today might discover a patch of green on a sandwich or a furry end on a forgotten apple, the sailor's frustration and disgust was universal. But with an ocean between themselves and any hope of replacement, coping became a skill as necessary as tying knots or trimming sails. Some seamen attempted creative solutions, soaking biscuits in warm liquid, hoping the heat would drive pests out, or using extra salt and vinegar to try and arrest mold's progress on what little cheese they had. But mostly, they learned to accept disappointment, keeping complaints to muttered grumbles, lest the cook hear, and ration portions even smaller out of spite. Can you recall a time when unwanted extras invaded your meal? Bugs in berries, mildew on bread, or strange growths in a forgotten carton? If it feels right to you, share below. Your story might make light of a shared annoyance or offer gentle reassurance to someone whose day also started with a less than perfect breakfast. The presence of maggots and mold became a bitter symbol of endurance at sea, a reminder that survival sometimes meant swallowing more than hope. But through these hardships, camaraderie grew. Each man, like each fungus and insect, part of the rough cycle that turned scarcity into stubborn strength. As the ship rocks gently onward, the taste of stale cheese and bug-ridden bread fades, giving way to dreams of cooking fires and spice, and the rare blessings of a dish that only brings comfort. Never cringe. Let those images carry you to the galley, where pots boil, and the next chapter, equal parts mishap and memory, waits quietly to unfold. The ship's galley, hidden deep within the vessel's belly, is a cramped and bustling heart of motion and heat. Imagine stepping close, where the air is thick with swirling smoke, curling in pale ribbons that sting your eyes and fill your nostrils with sharp, acrid tangs. The narrow space pulses with warmth. Iron kettles bubble over open flames, and heavy pots clang against wooden tables. The scent is a chaotic blend. Burnt wood, oily meat, hints of salted brine, and the ever-present salt air seeping through cracks. Every inch of the galley is occupied. There's scarcely room to move without feeling the discomfort of pressing shoulders or the scrape of bare skin against rough wood and iron. Hands work swiftly, ladling sludgy stews into bowls, carrying pots heavy with uncertain meals. Hot steam rises, wrapping around weary faces, the heat soaking through clothes and damp skin alike. Have you ever stood near a campfire where the smoke drifts unexpectedly into your eyes, Here, the pilots, sailors, and cooks navigate through smoke and flame with resigned grace, their senses sharpened by necessity even as they long for fresher air. The main dish today is a stew, its ingredients a mystery even to those who consume it. Bits of tough salted beef, softened with thyme and soaked in brine, bob beneath a greasy surface studded with wrinkled beans or dried peas. The aroma is muted yet complex, underlying bitterness, a faint sulfurous edge, and the deep saltiness that binds each mouthful together. It is filling, but hardly appetizing. Meals are hurried affairs. The clatter of spoons against wooden bowls mingles with low murmurs and occasional coughs. Everyone understands the routine. Eat quickly, reserve strength, and prepare for the next watch. The taste of charred edges and the whisper of smoke linger on their tongues long after bowls are empty. Cooking on ships was a careful ballet of managing resources and improvising over centuries-old techniques that had barely shifted since the first ocean crossings. Without modern ventilation, smoke was an unavoidable companion, and sailors learned to accept the stinging eyes and the constant sooty residue on their hands and faces. Imagine the feeling of clothes sticky with sweat and salt, the roughness of soot in your hairline, the buzz of heat pressing on your skin, and the fleeting relief when a breeze catches the smoke just enough to clear the air for a moment. Much like a kitchen overwhelmed by smoke, where every meal carries the risk of burned edges or forgotten pots, the galley demanded resilience as much as skill. Food was fuel, and flavor was a fleeting luxury. Have you ever cooked a meal when the smoke alarm blares, or meals burn before your eyes, and you laugh with friends about the disaster? On these voyages, such mishaps were daily occurrences, woven into the fabric of survival. If it feels right, consider the small, imperfect meals in your own life. Those moments when a burnt dish was somehow more memorable, or when a shared kitchen mishap turned into laughter. Only if you'd like, share your stories below. Your memories might lighten the load of someone else's kitchen struggles. As the galley quiets and the last embers flicker, the ship sails onward, carrying tales of smoke-filled meals and the indomitable spirit that turns survival into endurance. Ahead lies the chapter of spoiled cheeses and rare treats, a peek into the nuanced dance between hunger and hope upon the high seas. The hold of the ship carries an unmistakable scent, a tapestry woven from the salty sea air, mingling with the sharp, tangy aroma of aged cheese. Imagine stepping close to a barrel, its weathered wood cool and rough under your fingertips, the iron bands rusted but steady. Within, the cheese lies hidden beneath layers of brine, its surface mottled with the patina of both preservation and slow decay. In those days, dairy was a paradox, a comfort and a curse aboard ships. Cheese rounds, prized for their supposed longevity, came nestled in barrels packed tight with salt and oil. But the voyage was relentless, and time took its toll. What at first promised creamy texture and rich flavor would harden to a nearly inedible mass, or worse, soften into something sour and unsettling. Reaching for a wedge, you might feel the greasy rind beneath your fingers, cool and clammy despite the warmth of the hold. A gentle press might leave an indentation, a whisper of resilience amid the tough exterior. The smell is layered, a sharp bite of ammonia, the rich musk of fermentation, and a hint of the ocean's brine. Just one bite could send a shiver down your spine, the taste surprising, a dance of salt, tang, and unexpected sharpness that lingers long after. Imagine swallowing such a bite after days of hardtack and salted meat. The contrast is startling, the fleeting thrill of flavor, colliding with the knowledge that this cheese might be all that stands between hunger and despair. For many sailors, a slice of cheese was a rare delight, a treasure kept for special occasions or those struck by illness. Yet the cheese also told a tale of compromise and endurance. Layers of mold might paint the rind in blue and green, inviting hesitation, but also hinting at the live fermentation still at work beneath. Some batches were saved by careful washing, others by adding herbs or oils. But no matter the effort, the outcome was never guaranteed. The smell might remind you of an old cellar or basement where time has layered the air with history and mystery. The texture, too, demands a tactile courage, a willingness to embrace the imperfect in survival. There were always stories to tell over cheese. A sailor might swap the last wedge for a favored tool or the promise of an extra ration. Conversations in the dim light might turn to comparisons. Whose cheese was more pungent? Whose batch delivered the most luck or misfortune? And yet, in this shared struggle, these moments of taste were laden with meaning. A chunk of cheese could embody hope, resourcefulness, and the unrelenting human desire to find comfort, even in hardship. If you think back on your own experiences, perhaps there's a food you treasure not for pristine freshness, but for meaning, memory, or the warmth that stirs in your soul. Maybe an aged cheese brought home from a faraway market, or a favorite family recipe with a history all its own. If it feels right, you might share in the comments what food feels like a treasured comfort to you, in good times or bad. Your story could offer a welcome touch of warmth to someone navigating a hard night. From these barrels of cheese, rich as they are with memory, we'll drift forward, turning our gaze to the bright promise of fresh fruit and the mysteries carried in a single bulb of onion. Imagine the dim glow of lantern light illuminating a wooden crate tucked deep within the ship's hold. Inside, amidst a few desperate provisions, lies a treasure cherished by all, the last onion. Its papery skin rustles softly as it is gently lifted, the faint scent sharp and promising, a brief spark of life in a sea of stale and salted food. In the sailor's world, onions, garlic, and citrus fruits were rarities, luxuries saved for the sick, the favored, or occasions of great importance. These foods carried not just nourishment, but hope, their flavors alive with the promise of healing and relief. Onions, in particular, were believed to ward off evil spirits, a superstition that lent them an almost magical protection. In many cultures, onions were thought to shield against darkness and disease, a belief that traveled with sailors across oceans. The sharp tang of garlic added strength to meals and to spirits, while the bright zest of citrus was prized fiercely once its power to combat scurvy became understood, long before vitamins were known. The smell of freshly peeled orange rinds could lift a crew's mood instantly, weaving warmth and light into the dampest day. Imagine savoring the sound of a knife breaking through the onion's layers, the sharp, faintly sweet scent filling the cramped quarters, a momentary escape from the bland ration monotony. The act of sharing such a simple bulb was a ritual of kindness and survival, whispered among weary men as a sign of camaraderie and resilience. In the realm of superstition, some sailors believed peeling an onion thrice and placing a slice on their pillow would keep nightmares at bay. Others carried cloves of garlic to keep illness at a distance, a practice both hopeful and protective in equal measure. Can you recall any traditions or small rituals involving food in your life that carry meaning beyond nourishment? Perhaps a secret family recipe, a spice thought to bring luck, or a dish tied to fond memories. If you feel comfortable, share your own story in the comments below. Your reflections might bring comfort or inspiration to others in our community. The rarity of these bulbs and fruits made every bite precious, every morsel a symbol of hope amid hardship. To preserve such treasures was a delicate task, wrapping citrus in leaves, tucking onions between cloths, guarding them as fiercely as any blade. Imagine the sense of anticipation when word spread that fresh produce had been traded for at a distant shore, sparking a ripple of joy from the crew. The promise of that sweet crunch or tangy burst was a balm for the spirit, a connection to home and health. As night descends on the ship and the crew settle for rest, the onion's aroma lingers, holding within it tales of superstition, healing, and the human capacity to find hope in the smallest things. If it feels right, consider, what food would you save for uncertain times? A spice, a fruit, a recipe? What does that food represent to you? Sharing your thoughts may create a space where others find solace and joy. The ship sails onward, carrying stories of hardship and survival, and the quiet magic of the last onion lights a path through the dark. Imagine the ship's wooden deck, bathed in the golden hues of a sinking sun, as a tired crew gathers together after a long day at sea. The air is thick with the sharp scent of rum and salt, mingling with the evening's cool breeze, bringing both warmth and tension to this floating world. Drawing cups carved roughly from wood, the sailors prepare to partake in their daily ration of grog, a mixture of rum, water, and sometimes a whisper of spice or sugar, meant to warm both body and soul. This ritual, though simple, carries weight beyond its ingredients, quietly marking the passage of time amid the endless, indifferent ocean. The grog is carefully measured, rum poured with deliberate respect into each cup, followed by water, sometimes fresh, sometimes briny, depending on the fortunes of the voyage. On luckier days, a pinch of sugar or a dash of nutmeg might be added, its sweet aroma rising up to meet the sharpness of alcohol. Cups clink softly in unison, the sound echoing off the timbers and mast. In these moments, the sailors anchor themselves in shared experience, turning monotony into ceremony. Yet grog is a paradox. It soothes and strengthens, but also tests limits, dulling judgments, sometimes bringing risks. Some savor the bitter warmth, especially on cold, uncertain nights, finding comfort in a liquid embrace and brief relief from the burdens of the sea. Rationing grog was an art of balance. Too much, and discipline faltered. Too little, and despair grew. Captains kept strict watch, dividing spirits into daily allotments known as the tot, ensuring each man received his share without excess or envy. Evening toasts punctuated the day's toils, marking moments of camaraderie and resolve, and fostering a sense of unity and hope. In these small gatherings, the act of raising a cup together reminded all aboard that despite hardship, the journey was borne collectively. In many ways, these social rituals were not unlike our own toasts and celebrations today, drawing friends and family together through shared gestures and mutual support. As the sun dips beneath the horizon and the sea darkens, the sailors sip their grog with a blend of relief and quiet apprehension. It becomes a moment suspended between day and night, fatigue and alertness, fear and hope. What might seem like a simple drink carries the weight of survival, resilience, and the strength found in community. Maybe you can recall a time when a small ritual, a favorite drink, or a comforting sip offered a moment of balm during a difficult day. If it feels right to you, and only if you wish, share in the comments your own little rituals, comfort drinks, or moments of solace. No pressure. Your stories create a gentle circle of support, quietly weaving connections and comfort across the distance between us. With warmth shared and spirits gently lifted, the crew faces the night once more. The story carries on, afloat on hope and camaraderie, ready for the next challenge and the next heartbeat under wide, starlit skies. Let the ship's deck settle into the late evening hush, the waves outside dark but forgiving, lanterns swinging quietly as low laughter rises from below. In the cramped galley, the familiar scent of salt and boiled grains melts into something rare and hopeful. A hint of spice, the buttery whisper of pastry, a sweetness drifting through the shadows. Have you ever been far from home? Maybe at a college dorm, on a late travel assignment, or even on a road trip, when a holiday came around and you found yourself longing for a special meal, any small taste of celebration. Out at sea, during the age of exploration, these holidays were precious, anchors for sailors tethered to routine and scarcity. On Christmas or another sacred day, even the ordinary could become extraordinary. Picture someone in the galley carefully hiding a battered tin, scraping together dried fruit or secret bits of sugar saved from rations. The miraculous appearance of a pie, its crust misshapen, its filling little more than hardtack crumbs, softened with molasses or butter, could spark joy across the entire crew. The tiniest additions mattered. Cloves or cinnamon, hoarded from ports long gone, would fill the cramped air with a warm, spicy aroma, shading it with memories of crowded family tables and festive kitchens. Imagine that first bite. Maybe a little tough, maybe not the pie of home, but rich with more meaning than flavor. Eaten slowly, shared in silence that feels like reverence. Birthdays, too, took on a deeper meaning at sea. When a sailor's birthday rolled around, the cook might try to bake a humble loaf of bread with dried raisins, stirring in whatever sweetener could be found. Flour, sugar, or eggs, if any remained, were pooled together as crew contributions. Someone might even sneak a bit of jam or preserved fruit, reserved for just such a day, to smear atop a slice and transform a sparse meal with just a bit of brightness. Candles were rare, but the gesture of scraping wax from lanterns to shape a quick birthday candle, lighting it atop a hunk of bread, was an act of pure affection. Do you remember a time when a holiday or birthday meant making do, celebrating with whatever you had, maybe gathering around a hand-drawn card, a single dessert, or just a favorite story retold in a group? Just as many people today keep their own traditions alive, pizza in place of turkey, or a sweet treat from a vending machine, these sailors shaped their celebrations with creativity and the barest supplies. Despite the scarcity, the desire to mark special days endured. Sometimes, the desire itself brought more comfort than the food, tying each traveler back to a chain of memory that threaded across oceans, from the company of shipmates to mothers, friends, and partners waiting on distant shores. The feel of something festive in a wooden bowl, the gentle offering of a slice or a spoonful, became a declaration. You matter to us. You are remembered. Stories would flow alongside the special meals, tales of home traditions, of feasts missed, and new rituals crafted. Songs might break out, voices unpracticed, but full, echoing in the wooden belly of the ship and spilling up to the stars. Even the ship's captain sometimes lightened the mood with extra ration of rum or a rare sweet, delighting in the shared glow. If it feels right to you, only if you'd like, share below a memory of a creative or modest holiday celebration that touched your heart. Did a simple food or small gesture turn a lonely day into something special? Your story could inspire someone else to find celebration in humble moments, even far from home. As the crumbs are brushed from bowls and laughter fades, the holiday passes, but the comfort lingers. The act of making a feast from nothing, of finding joy in the barest gifts, is a lesson in hope and resourcefulness, a reminder that connection is the most nourishing feast of all. With hearts a bit lighter, the crew drifts into slumber, their dreams padded with memories and the promise that celebration, no matter how small, is possible anywhere the human spirit endures. And as the night bathes the ship in quiet, the ripples of those moments carry forward, ready to warm the next long watch and the stories yet to come. Below deck, the gentle creak and roll of the ship often gave way to a subtler unease, a slow ache growing in the bones, a heaviness in the limbs, the kind of discomfort that settles deep when the body is deprived for too long. Imagine sitting with your back against the rough planks, your mouth dry and tender, gums swollen and bleeding at the slightest touch. The air shifts between cool and clammy, tinged with a faint medicinal mustiness, cloths boiled and wrung, a sharp whiff of vinegar barely covering the underlying fatigue that hangs over the sick bay. Scurvy, born of too many days without fresh fruits or vegetables, marked its presence with relentless persistence. Sailors' skin turned pale and speckled, wounds refused to heal, and joints ached with every movement. Even a handshake from a friend felt sharp, as if the world itself had become tender and sore. Can you picture feeling this worn, day after day, when every small task demands more energy than you have to give? Many of us have faced a stretch of the flu or a spell of low spirits, where ordinary food just isn't enough to spark relief. Alongside scurvy, dysentery crept in with equal stealth, a sickness of the gut that brought weakness, fever, and the humiliation of constant discomfort. The simple act of sharing a meal could become a risk, as contaminated water and close quarters spread illness with each sip and crumb. Hope came in whispers, a rumor that citrus had been stowed away for emergencies, a dream of lemon, lime, or sweet plum that might ease aching bodies. The scent of citrus peel, when it appeared, rang so sharply against the senses it seemed to promise healing with a single breath. A rare portion of orange or a few drops of lemon in water became both a medical intervention and a miracle of comfort. Have you, in your own life, craved some particular food when you were ill? A broth carried with love, a mug of tea made just right, a soft square of toast with honey melting in the middle? For the men on these ships, comfort food was a far memory, a longing that returned each night with the ache in their gums and the twist in their bellies. Sometimes it's not just the food, but the care in how it's offered that soothes, like friends who bring soup or a favorite snack when you're feeling low. Desperation can give rise to creativity. Some sailors brewed thin teas from pine needles or steeped dried herbs believed to have healing power. They chewed on the tough outer peels of rare onions or scavenged any wild green between ports, their mouths flooding with tang and hope at any hint of flavor. Yet there was also quiet endurance, meals eaten in silence, bowls clasped tight to the chest, eyes closed not out of prayer, but out of survival, marking another day gone by without real recovery. Friends comforted each other, a shared blanket, a gentle shoulder, soft words when nothing else was left to give. If it feels right to you, only if you'd like, pause to reflect. Is there a comfort food that calls to you in hard times? A beloved recipe, a favorite treat, even just a glass of cold water when you're run down? You're welcome to gently share below. Your small traditions of comfort might light the way for someone else facing their own long, hard stretch. As the ship sails on, the hope for healing clings to each battered frame, a longing not just for food, but for home, health, and the shared promise that relief will one day come with landfall and the freshest bite of all. From sickness and scarcity, the story drifts forward, always searching for solace and the slow, steady return to warmth and well-being. Step into a brighter, quieter corner of the ship, the officer's mess, where the familiar clang of tin and rough wood benches gives way to the gentle clink of china and polished cutlery. Here, the air is subtly perfumed with a sweeter, richer aroma, spiced preserves and well-aged wine, butter-packed tea treats, and tins of tinned fruits, their scents winding upward and mingling with well-brewed coffee. Imagine resting your hand on the pristine linen of the tablecloth, smooth and cool under your fingers, a world apart from the sticky wood and salt-stained canvas below. Meals for officers and captains were designed as much for comfort and status as for sustenance. Plates of blue and white porcelain, carefully stowed away for the journey, gleamed even in dim candlelight. The first slice from a rich fruit cake, the delicate taste of preserved peaches, or the buttery crumble of a rare biscuit spoke of privilege and careful planning. Treats bought in port, secreted away in personal lockers, and brought out for special occasions or trusted guests. Conversation at this table was measured and polite, filled with gentle laughter, stories of distant ports, and discussions of navigation or diplomacy. The meals themselves offered small escapes, a sprinkling of nutmeg, a bit of clove, a dash of brandy in the tea. These were not just food, but reminders of the world at large, of cities busting with markets and gardens, of home kitchens rich with spice and sweetness. Can you recall a time, maybe at school or in the workplace, when lunch brought together people in the same space, but separated them by what was packed or bought? The divide between a brown bag sandwich and a crisp salad from a cafe, or the gap between cafeteria fare and a carefully prepared meal from home. These small differences build subtle walls, often felt more keenly than spoken. On board, the crew's simple, repetitive meals contrasted with the officers' secret stashes and special feasts. A jar of pickles shared among gentlemen, a tin of potted meat passed around on a captain's birthday. These tokens reinforced the hierarchy. The sense of spice, the clink of glassware, the smooth texture of finer bread underscored the stratified nature of shipboard life. Yet this separation brought its own kind of loneliness. For all its comfort, the officer's table could feel quiet, observed, perhaps even isolated, laughter measured, stories carefully chosen. In the privacy of their quarters, some officers wrote wistful letters home, or shared treats only with each other. The boundary between us and them, etched as surely as any law of the sea. Just as many people today might sense a subtle exclusion at a dinner table or compare their bagged lunch to the trendy dish across the table, so too did food on the ship become a kind of silent language, shaping relationships, drawing and redrawing lines of class and camaraderie. If it feels right to you, perhaps reflect on a time when a meal revealed hidden barriers, or when a simple sharing of food helped bridge them. No pressure, but if you'd like, your gentle story could spark someone else to build connection in their own world. As the officers finish their tea, the glow lingers. Soft porcelain, warm spices, and the subtle taste of privilege. Down below, the clatter and scrape of bowls continues, and the story rolls on, diving into the shadowy world of smuggled flavor and clandestine comfort, where even a pinch of pepper could be currency among hungry men. The ship rocks gently under a cloud-shrouded night, lanterns swinging in their hooks, casting golden pools against the dark. Somewhere below deck, a small circle of men huddle together, the ritual almost secret. Someone unwraps a tightly folded scrap of cloth, revealing a few slender black peppercorns or a golden pinch of nutmeg, their scent sharp and stirring in the heavy, stagnant air. Have you ever found yourself savoring a forbidden or rare snack? A piece of candy tucked away, or a packet of hot sauce squirreled from home, treasuring the anticipation before the first taste as much as the food itself? Spices were contraband comfort in the rigid world of shipboard rations. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, or star anise, illicitly bought, won in a dice game, or smuggled from an earlier port, became treasures, traded in whispers, hoarded in the deepest pockets. The thrill wasn't just in the flavor, but in the risk. A sprinkle of black pepper in a bowl of bland gruel, a dusting of nutmeg that briefly transported a weary sailor to the bustling spice stalls of a faraway city. The aroma alone, a warm, nose-tingling perfume, could lift the spirits, ushering in memories of kitchens and feasts, of celebrations now scattered by the seas. Sometimes, these flavors were slipped into the officers' meals by a kind crewman or traded quietly below for a night watch favor. Some men risked hard punishment for a taste of contraband, even waiting until midnight to tip a hidden pouch's contents over the next day's biscuit. Morale hinged on these secret, flavor-filled rebellions. A few peppercorns could turn a dreary meal into an occasion, and a ration of cinnamon, shared among friends, became a feast of the senses. The tiniest taste, a bite that tingled on the back of the tongue, a warm flush of spice on the lips, sparked stories. Where did you get that? How much for just a taste? Just as many people today might smuggle a favorite condiment into a workplace cafeteria or guard the last cookie at the back of the pantry, these ocean-crossing sailors went to great lengths for the pleasure of flavor. Spices became currency, traded for rumors, for chores, sometimes for loyalty in the small, tense democracy below deck. To catch the scent of contraband spice on another sailor's fingers was to be reminded of home, of mothers' kitchens and street markets, of times when food brought joy rather than mere survival. These forbidden bites became stories themselves, tales told in hushed voices about the lengths someone went to for a handful of peppercorns, or the risks taken to bring just one vivid flavor across an unforgiving sea. Have you ever hidden a favorite treat or gone out of your way for a specific taste, knowing it would bring just a little joy? Maybe it was a special coffee you kept for rough mornings, or a spice you tucked away during a long trip. If it feels right to you, gently share below. What's your contraband comfort? The rare food or flavor you'd go the extra mile for? No pressure and no judgments here? Your story could inspire someone else to treasure their own little stash of joy. As the circle of men disperses, the aroma of pepper and nutmeg lingers, subtle but unforgettable, threading through the ship as a quiet promise that pleasure and connection can be found, even in hardship. Let these secret flavors carry you forward as the journey continues into the next uncertain day, warmed by the memory of rebellion and the courage it takes to pursue small happiness across a sea of sameness. The ship rocks gently, buffeted by unseen waves, as the creaking of timbers carries whispers of unease across the decks. Below, the air is thick with tension, heavy as the damp salt that clings to every surface. The familiar scent of salted meat once promised sustenance, but now is tinged with something darker, a sharp bite of spoil, and the musty weight of damp barrels from which hope has long since seeped away. You can nearly hear the murmurs, low and urgent, weaving through the cramped quarters where men gather not just to eat, but to cast wary eyes on the thinning stores. The clatter of empty pots and the lingering bitterness of last night's gruel form a stark backdrop to voices that carry frustration, fear, and rumors. As the days unwind into one another, hunger gnaws not only at bellies, but at discipline and trust. Conversations waver between whispers and shouts, stories handed down turn to speculation, and bare threats hang in the humid air. Reports of rotten rations spark arguments. A slab of meat, once prized, is found riddled with worms. Stale bread crumbles into dust beneath shaking hands. Among the crew, a single spark, perhaps a whispered tale of an island lush with fruit, or word of a fresh catch from a passing ship, ignites flickers of hope and desperation. Rumors fly, feeding fear of the unknown, but also a yearning for salvation. Sometimes, a glance sharpens into a glare. Alliances shift beneath the watchful eyes of officers. It's easy to imagine the weight of these moments, the creak of a hatch door swinging open to reveal empty barrels, the bitter taste of brine mingling with sweat and anger, the taut silence following a harsh word. Have you ever felt the quiet pressure of scarcity? Perhaps when a grocery run stretched too long, or a gathering where the food ran low and tempers flared? In such times, even the simplest disappointment can echo like a storm. Stories of mutiny, of crews seizing control, of shouted demands for fairness, are part of the lore sailors shared in hushed tones. Some were real, others legendary, but all spoke of the thin line between endurance and revolt. Yet beneath the surface, camaraderie flickers like a fragile flame. Shared hardship can forge bonds no less strong than those in abundance. When the storm of hunger passes, the men lie side by side, caught between fear and hope, waiting for dawn. As you listen now, consider, in your own life, have you faced moments when scarcity, be it of food, patience, or kindness, tested your peace? How did you find calm? What small comfort carried you through? If it feels right, gently share your reflections in the comments below. Your experiences may offer quiet solace to others navigating their own challenges. Let the ship continue its voyage, carrying stories of struggle, whispers of rebellion, and the steadfastness of hearts determined to sail toward a brighter horizon. Imagine the ship coming gently to rest in a shallow bay, its hull rocking in the mild swell as a new day breaks. The salty breeze mingles now with something different, a hint of earth, a tang of unfamiliar herbs, the distant sizzle of food roasting over coals on the shore. You hear the chatter of voices, the rise and fall of laughter from a nearby village market. Have you ever wandered through a farmer's market in a new town? Every scent and flavor, both inviting and mysterious, the sound of many languages and the warmth of strangers all around you. As sailors step ashore, senses awaken to color and freshness unknown for months. Palms brush rough baskets of just-picked produce, green herbs, sun-warmed root vegetables, sparkling citrus, and pungent spices piled high. Locals and sailors exchange unsure gestures, trading dried fish for chilies, beads for ginger root, preserved meat for fragrant bundles of basil and lemongrass. These dockside markets, sometimes called bazaars or mercados, were common in port towns, the heart of commerce and culture, where goods and stories mingled freely. Sometimes the connection comes easy: laughter over a shared taste, the careful passing of a beloved recipe from one hand to another. Other times, there's confusion. Foods look familiar, but taste astonishingly different. Words are traded with a smile, and gestures fill the gaps language cannot reach. A sailor might bite into a strange fruit and wince at its tartness, only to watch a local show him the right way to savor it, a lesson in humility and discovery. Have you ever tried to cook with an ingredient you'd never seen before, or swapped recipes with a friend whose traditions were new to you? The crew's galley transforms for a day, steaming pots now rich with new flavors: ginger, cloves, the bright zip of pepper, a swirl of coconut or honey. The ship feels lighter, voices louder, as men rediscover the joy of eating with curiosity instead of resignation. Of course, not every discovery is lasting. Once the ship sails, some new foods spoil quickly or disappear, the taste lingering as memory. Other times, a few seeds are carefully saved, a treasured spice hidden away until the next celebration. These moments at strange shores become legends, stories retold in the quiet of midnight watches. Remember that soup, hot enough to make you sweat through your shirt? That night we traded saltfish for pineapple and ate until the stars faded. If you could share one food from home with someone far away, knowing it might change their world just a little, what would it be? Only if you'd like to, share your answer below. Perhaps it's your favorite pie, a comforting stew, a sweet you loved as a kid, or something uniquely beloved from your hometown. Your taste of home might inspire comfort or curiosity for someone oceans away. As gentle waves lap against the hull and the markets close, the ship drifts back to sea, bellies and hearts made warm with the flavors of a fleeting friendship. Crates, packed with spices, and hands scented with foreign herbs. The story continues. Flavors, faces, and memories of connection stowed alongside the old sturdy hopes of every traveler far from home. The ship sways gently as dusk settles across endless waves, and the scent of the ocean, sharp, briny, ever-present, drifts through open hatches. Below, deck, the men gather close, their voices soft and tired, the wooden planks beneath them creaking with every swell. It's a quiet hour between the toil of the day and the unknowns of night, and for many, this hush becomes a canvas for memory. You might notice the rough feel of a blanket pulled tighter around your shoulders, scratchy, but a comfort nonetheless. The air is heavy with longing, a taste of salt that lingers on the tongue even after the last dry biscuit has been swallowed. In these moments, conversation turns gently to home. One sailor's eyes close as he describes his mother's stew, a bubbling pot fragrant with beef and root vegetables, carrots buttery and soft, steam curling over chipped ceramic bowls. Another remembers the crackle of fresh bread, warm and golden, torn open to reveal its pillowy heart. The room seems to grow warmer with each memory. The sweetness of pies cooling in a window, the delicate flake of pastry, the subtle tartness of wild apples, or the good burn of cinnamon. Isn't it remarkable how memories of food can fill even the emptiest stomachs? Has there ever been a dish or meal from home you longed for? Something you could almost smell or taste even when far away? Many people today feel that ache on long business trips, during college semesters, or when a family recipe just isn't possible to make. The men on these ships use their homesick daydreams as a tool for survival, letting them knit hope from the simplest flavors and build strength from the warmth of memory. The sharing of these dreams becomes an act of communion, a collective ritual older than the sea itself. Someone mimics the sound of a rolling pin, another mimes the flourish of a generous hand with spices, and laughter, faint but real, lifts the heaviness for a moment. The glow of a lantern, the scratch of a pen on a letter begun and set aside, the murmurs of names and places. All of these details turn hunger and longing into a patchwork of comfort. If it feels right to you, gently consider, is there a dish or flavor that speaks of home to you? Only if you'd like, share your comfort meal, the one you miss, the one that's like a secret handshake with your childhood or with someone you love. Your story, no pressure at all, may help someone else savor the taste of connection, even far from home. As the night deepens, the ship continues its slow journey. Bellies may still grumble, but hearts are a little fuller, fed by memory, by laughter, by the soft glow of shared dreaming. The promise of a meal waiting somewhere on the other shore, of arms and kitchens and songs remembered, is strong enough to carry even the weariest sailor forward. And as you listen to the gentle creak of the ship, or the quiet hush of your own room tonight, know that the taste of home is never truly out of reach. It lingers with us, a thread from soul to soul, anchoring every traveler until the long return is finally complete. The ship's gentle swaying finally yields to the solid, forgiving firmness of land beneath your feet. Imagine stepping down the gangplank, boots pressing into earth that feels almost miraculous after weeks aboard rolling timber and endless sea. The air itself is new, fragrant, sweet, bursting with life. Breathe in deeply, and you'll catch a riot of scents. Sun-warmed fruit, freshly broken leaves, the earthy richness of fresh spilled soil, and the distant charcoal of open-air market fires. Laughter tumbles from a patchwork of stalls, baskets brimming with colors as vivid as a dream. Deep blues and purples of ripe plums and eggplants, the emerald bite of green peppers, the electric gold of sun-bright lemons and mangoes. For weeks at sea, taste and smell have been dulled. Now, every inhale is a gift. Have you ever returned home after a long journey, opened the fridge, or walked through a summer farmer's market and felt like every scent and color was newly invented just for you? Your hands might tremble a little as you reach for your first bite. Sink your teeth into a mango, and golden juices spill down your wrist, sticky and perfumed. So sweet it almost aches. A crust of freshly baked bread, torn open with eager fingers, yields steam, and the pillowy softness of home. The warmth fills your mouth and your spirit. Taste buds, numbed by salted meat and stale biscuit, come alive with their first true joy in many months. Wander the bustling edges of the market. Vendors busily brush dirt from beets or slice wedges off heavy watermelons. The sound of knives tapping wood echoing like a heartbeat. Children dash between baskets, their voices bright, plucking grapes or sampling herbs with shy, delighted bites. The world is overwhelming and wonderful. Even the breeze carries a hint of citrus and the green, peppery bite of fresh cress. Can you remember a moment when a single meal, after travel or longing, seemed to set everything in your life right? Maybe the first sweet orange of the season, a juicy burger after a road trip, or the comfort of your own bed and a plate of eggs after missing home. What food or ritual reunites you with yourself when you've been away too long? Sailors marvel at each taste, some chewing a single grape so slowly its brightness lingers far beyond the swallow. For a few, the first crunch of lettuce, so crisp it squeaks, is enough to draw unexpected laughter or grateful tears. These moments become stories passed from hand to hand, the sweetness of a peach or the tang of a fresh tomato retold for comfort long after the meal is gone. A market's energy pulses through you, people shouting friendly greetings, the slap of fish landing on a block, the gentle rustle of coins trading hands. New recipes are shown by gesture and taste. Unexpected pairings, flavors never dreamed of on the open sea. Sometimes, a wide-eyed crewman returns to the ship with a bag of spicy peppers or a wedge of yellow cheese, determined to stretch the joy a few days longer. Let your senses savor it. The rough weave of a market bag swinging from your hand, the radiant heat of bread held to your cheek, the chilly slip of melon juice pooling at your fingertips. Notice how your mood shifts, rising in step with the freshness all around you. A hopeful relief, a sense that life, after all, is abundant and inviting. If it feels right to you, only if you'd like, share below a favorite first bite story or post-trip meal. The food or flavor that brings you back to yourself after a long time away. No pressure. Your story may help someone else remember their own simple, glad moment. As the sun sets beyond the market, painting stalls and city walls in golden light, the day closes with hearts refreshed and spirits eager for the next new taste. Let this joy in simple things, bread, fruit, warmth, and laughter, carry through your dreams tonight. A gentle reminder that the world always waits with something sweet after every long voyage. When the last crumbs have been brushed from bowls and the glow of the market fades into memory, sailors settle into the deep, calming hush between story and sleep. The steady rise and fall of the ship becomes a heartbeat, a rhythm that echoes the lessons learned in times of hunger, hope, and shared endurance. In the quiet, the mind drifts back to the taste of hardtack chewed in silence, the sharp relief of a stolen orange, the rough comfort of a hand passing a cup between friends. Food on these long voyages was never just nourishment. It was a teacher, sometimes stern, sometimes kind, revealing truths about patience, gratitude, and the limits of self and community. Think of how many moments were shaped by scarcity, the humility found in receiving, the ingenuity sparked by necessity, the relief of finding even simple joy in an unexpected flavor. Each meal, whether meager or bountiful, became a way to measure time and test spirits, drawing sailors together across class and background, forging bonds from hardship and humor alike. Have you ever noticed how going without something, even for a little while, can turn the ordinary into a blessing? Maybe it's the warm embrace of a real bed after roughing it on the road, the simple luxury of a hot shower after a few days away, or the bright taste of fresh fruit after weeks of bland fare. These small deprivations don't just sharpen cravings, They teach appreciation, gently transforming the overlooked into a treasure. Sailors learn to savor the rare, to celebrate the shared, and to carry forward gratitude, not just for food, but for each meal seasoned by laughter, story, and hope. It's a lesson that drifts gently over time, tying their world to ours. If it feels right to you, only if you'd like, pause for a moment and think, what's one thing you now appreciate more deeply because you've gone without it, even for a short time? We invite you to gently share your insight, memory, or small story in the comments below. Your reflection, offered without pressure, might spark recognition and gratitude in someone else tonight. The ship's journey, just like our own, is marked by these ordinary miracles, quiet lessons in resilience and thankfulness. Let the memory linger a while, the warmth of a shared fire, the taste of long-awaited sweetness, the gift of enough, and allow it to steady you as you carry these lessons gently into the dreams and tomorrows ahead. And so, the tale continues onward, toward home and hearth, leaving traces of wisdom for every traveler drawn to the quiet power of remembering what really matters. Let the world slow as night settles over the quiet sea, your breath rising and falling with the gentle swells. In the stillness, the ship creaks beneath you with a comforting rhythm, the old familiar groan of wood meeting water, as eternal as the tide itself. The air is cool against your skin, tinged with a trace of salt, and soft enough to blur the worries of the day into memory. Listen, if you'd like, to the barely there hush of waves lapping along the hull. Conversation has faded to a pleasant murmur, old friends exchanging nods and smiles beneath dim lanterns. They share stories, some whispered, some hearty, of meals endured and moments survived, every tale a thread of kinship binding the night together. One sailor runs his hand along the worn grains of a table. Another cups his mug close, their gestures speaking of fatigue, but also of comfort and belonging. There is a warmth in this scene, a blanket draped over weary shoulders, the gentle pat on a friend's back, the feel of sturdy planks beneath tired feet. Have you ever noticed how the smallest touches can soothe the heart at the end of a long journey? Maybe it's a soft pillow, a favorite old t-shirt, or simply the weight of a companion's presence nearby. Here, every rough chapter, the hunger, the storms, the hope, has led gently back to this soft, glowing harbor of togetherness. Sleep begins to creep in on padded feet, coaxed by the memory of shared bread, laughter after hardship, and the low, patient song of distant surf. It's natural now to let your mind drift, imagining the cool press of linen sheets, the mellow ache of well-used muscles, the honest pride of having endured and arrived. The camaraderie of those around you weave into your dreams, a quiet reassurance that, even in darkness, comfort is found in connection and in simple joys. If you listen closely, you might catch the last notes of an old lullaby, or the gentle retelling of a tale about a favorite meal, or a fond hope for tomorrow. You might forget the sharp frustrations of the voyage, but you'll remember the glow of kindness, the taste of rare sweetness, and the steady presence of those who traveled beside you. Is there something you return to, deep in the night, that brings you back to warmth and ease? Perhaps a soft memory, a touchstone of comfort, or a shared ritual that always leads you home to rest. Only if you'd like, share it in the comments. Your gentle farewell could light the way for another soul seeking peace tonight. With a final glimpse at the horizon, the survivors gather one last moment before bed's beckon. A nod, a smile, the the settling of old aches into quiet gratitude. Close your eyes with them, letting the gentle darkness gather close, the weight of stories settling into the hush. Every rough chapter gives way, at last, to comfort, warmth, and the kind of connection that weaves through every good story. Tonight, may you drift into your own dreams, gently, guided by memories of kindness and sustained by the hope of a soft, bright dawn. Good night, traveler. You have sailed far. Now let yourself rest, wrapped in the hush of waves, the healing breath of sleep, and the lasting glow of company well kept. If it feels right to you, as you settle into rest tonight, perhaps share in the comments what touched you most in this journey. Was it a particular story, a smell, or a comforting image? Or maybe what small ritual or memory helps you find peace at the end of your day? Your kind words could gently light the way for someone else drifting towards sleep, offering calm and connection across the miles.